The air in the courtroom was thick with a stillness that felt heavier than the midday heat filtering through the high, arched windows. Dust motes danced in the sunbeams, illuminating the weary faces of the spectators and the polished, dark wood of the benches. The only sounds were the distant hum of the city and the rhythmic, almost hypnotic tapping of the bailiff's pen against the notepad. Judge Judy's bench, a towering fortress of jurisprudence, cast a long, imposing shadow over the proceedings. Her gaze, sharp and unwavering, was a physical weight, settling upon each person in the room like a verdict in itself. The voice of the announcer cut through the silence, a monotone that served to both introduce and condemn. The matter of Sonkrant Nichols stepped forward. It was an invitation that felt more like a command. Two figures, a young woman and a young man, rose from their seats. They walked with a cautious, almost reluctant grace, their gazes carefully averted from each other. They were two poles of a magnet, once joined, now repelling with a quiet, undeniable force. 21-year-old Megan Sonkrant is suing her ex-boyfriend, 24-year-old Tyler Nichols, for loans to buy bedroom furniture and matching tattoos. The words hung in the air, a summary of a relationship reduced to a list of debts. Megan, her posture stiff and her hands clasped tightly in front of her, looked out at the court, her eyes betraying a deep well of hurt and defiance. Tyler, his shoulders slumped and his face a mask of weary resignation, stared at the floor as if hoping to find an escape hatch. Judge Judy's voice, when she finally spoke, was a low rumble, a sound that demanded attention. "Ms. Sonkrant, this used to be your boyfriend. He's not your boyfriend anymore." Her words were not a question, but a statement of cold, hard fact. The relationship, once a vibrant tapestry of shared moments, was now just another case file. While he was your boyfriend, the two of you went on holiday together, decided to get matching tattoos. He didn't have any money. You laid out the money for his tattoo. As the judge spoke, Megan's mind drifted back, a sudden, vivid flashback. It was a sun-drenched afternoon on a beach in a place far from this sterile room. The air was salty, and the sound of waves crashing was a symphony of freedom. They were young, their skins still smooth and unmarked by the passage of time or the ink that would soon bind them. Tyler's laugh, a warm and easy sound, filled the air as they walked hand in hand, their fingers intertwined. They found a small, unassuming tattoo parlor tucked away on a side street. The air inside smelled of disinfectant and the sharp metallic tang of new ink. Tyler, a little nervous but beaming with a boyish excitement, had insisted on the idea. "Matching tattoos," he had said, his voice a low whisper in her ear, "to prove we're in this forever." Megan, her heart swelling with a love so pure and intoxicating it felt like a physical ache, had agreed without a second thought. She had pulled out her wallet, not even bothering to think about the pin. It was a small price to pay for a promise, for a symbol of their forever. The judge's voice brought her back to the present, the memory fading like a Polaroid in the sun. "Yes," Megan whispered, the single word a fragile echo of a happier time. "Sometime way after that, he used your credit card to purchase furniture." So there was a loan for furniture for his apartment. The timeline of their relationship, once a blur of shared days and nights, was now being dissected, each event a separate transactional moment. The furniture, a symbol of their domestic dreams, was now just a line item on a spreadsheet of debt. The love had been stripped away, leaving only the cold, hard bones of the financial agreements. "Yeah, and Megan said, her voice a little stronger this time, a note of resignation replacing the earlier hurt. "He still hadn't paid you for the tattoo, right?" "Correct." The judge leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that everyone in the room could still hear. "Forget about the tattoo. Do you still have the tattoo?" Megan hesitated. She hadn't expected the question. She had worked so hard to put the past behind her, to cover up the physical evidence of a love that had soured. She looked at her arm, the memory of the ink-filled needle a ghost sensation. "Yes." "Do you still have the tattoo?" the judge repeated, her voice a little louder, a little more insistent. Megan's gaze flickered to Tyler, who was still staring at the floor, his face unreadable. She wondered if he still had his. Did he look at it every day and feel a pang of regret? Or had it become just another part of his skin, a story forgotten? Yes, but it's covered. The words came out in a rush, a quiet confession. A low murmur rippled through the courtroom. The judge, her curiosity piqued, leaned back in her chair. But what? It's covered, Megan repeated, a little louder now, a hint of defiance in her tone. It's covered with what? Writing. The judge's face, which had been a mask of impassive authority, now showed a flicker of confusion. What did it say? Megan took a deep breath, her eyes darting to her ex-boyfriend before settling on the judge's stern face. It was a K with a heart, like a king. The judge squinted, her hand cupped behind her ear. It was what? K with a heart. The bailiff, a man named Bird with a kind face and a stoic demeanor, leaned forward. K with a heart, with a heart. He repeated, his voice a low rumble that managed to be both helpful and comical. The judge shot him a look that was a perfect blend of gratitude and annoyance. Oh, with K with a heart. Is that your name? She asked Megan. The judge's momentary confusion, her human frailty, was a small crack in the granite facade of the courtroom. It was a brief, almost humorous moment that served to highlight the absurdity of the entire situation. No, it was king, and then mine was queen. The silence that followed was thick with the weight of that simple statement. A king and a queen, a promise, a fairy tale etched in ink, now a symbol of a kingdom that had long since crumbled. Tyler, for the first time, looked up, his eyes meeting Megan's. For a fleeting second, she saw a flicker of the old Tyler, the boy who had promised her forever. Then the mask of resignation fell back into place, and he looked away. The judge, her face a mixture of exasperation and amusement, shook her head. I really have to get my hearing checked. I swear, everybody better go to articulation classes. Bird, the ever-present foil, leaned in with a wry grin. That's not gonna happen. The judge shot him another look, a playful, wordless exchange that made the corners of her mouth twitch. The courtroom, for a brief moment, felt less like a place of judgment and more like a stage for a darkly comedic play. The love story of Megan and Tyler, a saga of tattoos and furniture, of promises and debts, was now just another performance for a jaded audience. The ink on their skin, once a symbol of their forever, was now a scar, a faded memory covered by new writing, a new story. But this was only the beginning of what was to be told. A loan of love, a debt of regret. The courtroom air was still heavy, but a new layer of tension had settled over the room. The first act of their drama, the tale of the matching tattoos, was over. Now a new scene was beginning, one with more tangible props. A mattress, a TV, a bed frame. The judge, having dispensed with the symbolic debt, was now moving on to the more practical one. She turned her steely gaze from Megan to Tyler. No, you moved into an apartment. You didn't have any furniture, Judge Judy said, her voice a low, insistent drumbeat. The memory of that move-in day washed over Tyler, a cold, unwelcome flood. The apartment had been a blank canvas, a hollow space waiting to be filled. The echo of his own footsteps had been the only sound, a stark reminder of his solitude. He had stood in the center of the living room, a cavernous space with a single window, and the emptiness had felt like a physical weight on his chest. It was a new beginning, yes, but it was also a gaping void. He had seen himself in the reflection of the bare window pane, a man with a new home, but no one to share it with, and nothing to fill the silence. He had called Megan that night, his voice a little too casual, a little too strained. He had tried to laugh it off, to make a joke of his Spartan existence, but she had heard the loneliness in his tone. She had listened, her voice a warm balm over the phone, and she had offered to help. It had felt like a lifeline, a promise of a future that would be less empty. Correct, Tyler said, his voice barely a whisper, a stark contrast to the memory of that lonely night. And how did you get furniture? He hesitated, the words feeling like stones in his mouth. He looked at Megan, her face a stoic mask, and then at the judge, whose expression was one of impatient waiting. He could feel the eyes of the spectators on him, their silent judgments like 1,000 tiny needles. Ms. Sonkrant offered to get, furniture for me. The words felt small, insignificant, a pale reflection of the grand gesture they had once represented. The judge leaned forward, her gaze piercing. What did she say? He remembered the conversation clearly. Megan's kindness, a painful memory now. She knew that I didn't have any furniture. So we went to a furniture store, and she helped me, picked it out, basically. The furniture store. The memory of that day was just as vivid as the tattoo parlor. They had walked through the cavernous showroom, a wonderland of domesticity. Megan, her eyes wide with a shared excitement, had run her hand over the polished wood of a dresser, a soft smile on her lips. They had sat on a king-size Serta mattress, bouncing a little, laughing like children, their bodies close, their future a bright, shimmering possibility. The prices had been a distant reality, a mere footnote to the shared fantasy they were building. He had looked at her, his heart full, and he had promised to pay her back, a promise that felt so easy and true in that moment. Okay, great. And do you remember how much it was? The judge asked, her voice a sudden, sharp pinprick in the memory bubble. Tyler's gaze dropped back to the floor. The exact amount was a ghost, a number he had tried to forget. Not off the top of my head, no. He lied. The number was seared into his memory, a brand on his soul. 2,235.54. It was a figure that represented a future he had never been able to afford. But you were making payments on it? His lie felt thin now, almost transparent. Not really. The judge's eyebrows shot up, a silent, theatrical gesture of disbelief. You never made any payments on it? No. Never. No. The word hung in the air, a small, sad confession. He could feel Megan's eyes on him now, not with anger, but with a weary disappointment that was far more painful. The silence in the room was deafening. The judge's next question was a hammer blow. Really? When was it purchased? In what month? I would say September-ish. Yeah. And it was bought on credit? Yes. The judge looked down at the file, her finger running along a line of text. The room was silent except for the rustle of paper and the low hum of the air conditioning. It was a moment of suspense, a drum roll before a reveal. How much was it? The question hung in the air, a final, unescapable demand. Megan's heart hammered against her ribs, the memory of that day, the act of love she had performed for him. A physical ache. She had swiped her card with a confident flourish, her hand not even trembling, her mind filled with images of their life together in his new furnished apartment. She had seen it as a small investment in their future, a gesture of faith. Tyler took a deep breath, the truth a bitter pill. It was 2,235.54. The number spoken aloud felt like an accusation. A low whisper rippled through the gallery, a collective gasp of disapproval. The judge, her face now a mask of cold, professional contempt, moved on to the next question. Well, what kind of work were you doing, Mr. Nichols? I worked in a factory. I was a machine operator. Still there? No. What are you doing now? Right now, I'm currently looking for a job. So you don't have a job? No. The words were an admission of failure, of an inability to provide for himself, let alone for a relationship. The shame of it all, of being laid bare for the world to see, was a hot, stinging sensation on his face. The judge, her voice dripping with sarcasm, returned to the subject of the furniture. And what kind of furniture did she buy you? The list was a litany of his failures, a painful inventory of the things he had taken from her home. It was a Serta mattress, king size, in the bed frame and the TV. The mention of the bed, the symbol of their most intimate moments, sent a jolt of pain through Megan. The mattress, once a soft cloud of shared dreams, was now a harsh symbol of their broken reality. The judge's next question was a theatrical masterstroke, a direct hit to the heart of the matter. And you have a new girlfriend? Tyler flinched, the question a sudden, unexpected blow. He had thought this was about the money, about the furniture. He had not expected the judge to delve into the new, fragile world he had built for himself. Yes. Do you watch the TV with your new girlfriend? The question is not just a question, it was a judgment. It was a public shaming, a pointed reminder that he was now sharing the fruits of Megan's labor with another woman. The courtroom buzzed with the spectators' whispers, their faces a mixture of shock and disgust. Tyler's face was a mask of defeat. Yes. And you sleep on the mattress in the frame? Yes. The judge paused, letting the weight of her questions settle. She looked at Tyler, then at Megan, a silent verdict passing between them. Then her final question, a rhetorical one, a statement disguised as an inquiry. You think it's right that the plaintiff paid for that? Tyler's answer was a desperate, final attempt at justification, a last-ditch effort to rewrite history. I mean, it was a gift. The words hung in the air, a flimsy shield against the avalanche of truth. It was a gift. He had convinced himself of that, of the idea that their shared love had made it so. But in the cold, sterile light of the courtroom, a gift was just a loan, and love was just a debt. The courtroom, the judge, and Megan knew it. But this was only the surface of the story. The annoying girlfriend and the vanishing evidence. The air in the courtroom was a tangible presence, a suffocating blanket woven from 1,000 silent stares. Judge Judy's final question, a rhetorical dagger aimed at Tyler, still hung in the air. You think it's right that she paid for it? It wasn't a question meant for an answer, but for a confession. Yet Tyler, with a casual shrug that seemed to mock the solemnity of the proceedings, chose to answer anyway. That I should pay for it? No, I don't think it's... His voice was a nonchalant drawl, the words a flimsy attempt to deflect responsibility. He was a man who believed his actions were justified, that a gift carried no obligation. This casual dismissal, this almost contempt for the financial and emotional debt he had incurred, was a final brutal blow to Megan. She watched him, her hands trembling in her lap, and felt a tidal wave of betrayal wash over her. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about the utter lack of respect, the casual cruelty of his self-justification. But before Tyler could finish his sentence, a new voice cut through the air, one that held the force of a thunderclap. Bird, that one's irritating me. Would you get her out of here? The judge's head snapped to the side, her gaze fixed on a young woman sitting in the gallery. It was Tyler's new girlfriend. She had been there the entire time, a silent witness, her presence an added layer of humiliation for Megan. She had been a ghost in the machine, a silent commentary on the new life Tyler had built with the furniture and TV Megan had paid for. Now that ghost was being exorcised. Bailiff Bird, ever the professional, rose from his seat with a quiet efficiency. Sure, ma'am. Over this way. He moved toward the young woman with a calm, steady gait, his large frame a stark contrast to her shrinking one. Her face, which had been a study in detached boredom, now registered a flicker of panic. She stood up, her purse clutched tightly, and followed Bird out of the courtroom. The click of her heels on the polished floor a final fading sound. The door closed behind her, and the silence in the room felt profound, almost sacred. The judge turned her attention back to Tyler, her voice a low, dangerous growl. You don't have to bring your new girlfriend. It's annoying. Do you understand? Tyler, his bravado finally cracking, nodded quickly, his eyes wide. Yes. Just annoying, the judge concluded, her tone a perfect blend of withering contempt and professional annoyance. It was a verbal slap, a reminder that this courtroom was her domain, and she would not tolerate a parade of disrespect. Now her gaze settled on Megan. The shift was palpable. The storm was over, and now it was time for the quiet, methodical work of justice. Now, Mrs. Sonkrant, Megan, startled by the sudden address, straightened her posture. Yes? When did you and Mr. Nichols break up? The question, so simple and direct, sent Megan's mind reeling back in time. She remembered the beginning of December, the air crisp and cold, the promise of a new year just around the corner. They had been in his apartment, the one now filled with the furniture she had bought. They had argued about something trivial, a small crack in the dam that had been holding back months of unspoken resentments. It had escalated, the words growing sharper, more hurtful, until the dam had broken entirely. He had accused her of being controlling. She had accused him of being irresponsible. The love had been gone for a while, a slow leak, but that night, the faucet had been turned off for good. She remembered the silence that followed, a crushing weight in the finality of him saying, "I think we need a break." It had been a usty, of course. It was a breakup in all but name. In the beginning of December, Megan answered, her voice a little shaky, the memory still fresh and raw. When was the first payment due on the furniture? Well, it would have been September, October 24th. Megan remembered that day too, the fear in her stomach. She had called him, a nervous knot in her chest. The first payment was due and she had been worried. Had he saved the money? Did he even remember? He had reassured her, his voice a calm balm over the phone. "I've got it. Don't worry. I'll pay it." "Who made that payment?" the judge asked, her voice a sharp demand. Megan looked at Tyler, who was now staring intently at the floor. He hadn't paid her back for that first payment or any of them. The promises had been empty, the words a hollow echo. But there had been another payment, the one he had made to the store. "He made that payment," Megan said, her voice stronger now, a note of certainty replacing the earlier tremor. The judge's gaze sharpened, a flicker of suspicion in her eyes. "Show me." This was the moment, the turning point. Megan reached for the stack of papers she had brought, her fingers fumbling a little, the paper crinkling with a quiet rustle that seemed to fill the room. She felt 1,000 eyes on her, 1,000 breaths held in suspense. This was her truth, her evidence, the cold, hard facts that would prove her story. "I only have the bills," she explained, her voice gaining confidence. "I don't have it showing that he paid, but I have evidence of him saying that he was paying me." The judge's face was unreadable, a stone statue of justice. "I would like to see that." Megan placed the papers on the table in front of her, a stack of bills and printed text messages. She sorted through them, her fingers tracing the dates, the amounts, the words he had sent her. Each message was a tiny sting, a reminder of the promises that had been broken, the trust that had been shattered. She found the right ones and slid them across the table. The rustle of the papers, the tap of her finger on the surface were the only sounds in the room. "All these," she said, her voice a quiet but firm declaration. The judge leaned forward, her eyes scanning the documents. The room was silent once more, a single spotlight on the evidence. The fate of their relationship, of their debts, was now in the hands of a woman who held a gavel and a power far greater than the fragile promises of love. Megan looked at Tyler, who still hadn't looked up, his face a mask of shame and defeat. He had thought he could get away with it, that a gift was just a gift. But Megan had kept the receipts, the evidence, the cold, hard proof of his deceit. The story of their love, of their shared king and queen tattoos, was now reduced to a stack of papers. But the judge had more powerful evidence in her hands. Shakespeare and the four-letter expletives. The courtroom, stripped of the new girlfriend's presence, felt smaller, more focused. The silence was absolute, broken only by the low hum of the fluorescent lights. Judge Judy, a master of timing, let the silence hang, letting the weight of her words settle on Tyler and Megan. Her gaze, a blend of sharp intelligence and weary amusement, settled on Tyler. "Isn't it nice I got rid of the new girlfriend?" she said, her voice a low purr. It wasn't a question, but a final, cutting remark. It was a victory lap in a race that had only just begun. The casual cruelty of the comment, the sheer audacity of her power, was a spectacle in itself. Tyler, his face flushed with a mixture of embarrassment and indignation, remained silent. He knew better than to challenge her now. The judge turned her attention to Megan's carefully prepared evidence, the stack of papers that had been handed to her. She held them with a professional detachment, as if they were just another piece of 1,000 puzzles she had solved. But her next words revealed that she had read them and that she had found a new, more potent weapon within their pages. "Just in case you think I'm going to be exceedingly hard on him, I just want you to read some of these emails back and forth," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that everyone in the room could hear. The tension in the room ratcheted up another notch. The judge was not just going to read the evidence, she was going to have it read aloud, a public performance of Tyler's own words. She handed the stack of papers to Bailiff Byrd. "And I want you to tell me whether, based upon these emails, you would buy U.S. savings bonds." Byrd, ever the deadpan comedian, took the papers with a nod. "They still sell those?" he asked, his voice a low rumble. The judge shot him a look that was a perfect blend of amusement and a shared understanding. If you have confidence in the country. The subtext was clear. These emails, and the man who wrote them, were about as trustworthy as a $3 bill. The courtroom erupted in a low murmur of appreciation for the judge's wit. Then her tone shifted again, the humor replaced by a cold, hard anger. She looked at Tyler, her eyes narrowing. You were going to pay her for the furniture. Unfortunately, your choice of language was such that the camera operator here can't take a picture of it because you only know how to express yourself using four-letter expletives. The words were a brutal public shaming. Tyler's face went from flushed to pale, a sudden stark realization of the depth of his exposure. He had forgotten the language he had used, the casual, vulgar promises he had made. The emails, which he had thought were a private exchange between a couple, were now being used as a weapon against him. He had been careless, and now he was paying the price. Tyler's head snapped up, a desperate denial on his lips. I don't believe... The judge cut him off, her voice a sharp crack. You don't believe what? He fumbled for a coherent thought, his mind racing to find a way out of this trap. Where did I say that I paid, I told her I was going to pay for it. His voice was a pathetic stammer, a man drowning and clutching at a straw. He was trying to rewrite history, to claim that the promises had never been made, that the loan had always been a gift. The judge leaned forward, her face a mask of cold, professional contempt. Would you show Shakespeare, please, the emails? She said to Bird, the sarcastic use of the nickname, a final crushing blow to Tyler's dignity. In the emails is where you told her. Bird, with a quiet efficiency, moved towards Tyler. The papers in his hand, a testament to Tyler's carelessness, seemed to hum with an unspoken power. He held them out, a silent invitation to face the truth. Tyler's eyes, wide with a dawning horror, were fixed on the documents. He had no choice but to take them. Here, man, Bird said, his voice low and gruff, a final, almost sympathetic nudge towards the truth. Tyler's hand trembled as he reached for the papers. The rustle of the pages, the touch of his fingers on the crisp paper, were a sensory overload. He saw his own words, his own careless promises laid out in black and white, the four-letter expletives, the casual promises, the easy dismissal of his financial obligations. It was all there, a permanent record of his deceit. Megan watched him, her heart a tangled mess of emotions. She felt a grim satisfaction at his public humiliation, but she also felt a deep sadness. This was not the man she had loved, the man who had promised her forever. This was a stranger, a man whose words were as empty as the apartment she had helped furnish. The king and queen tattoos, the furniture, the promises, it was all just a cheap, flimsy lie. And in that moment, the entire story was about to be laid bare. Tyler's fingers clenched tightly around the edges of the papers in his hands, the crisp edges biting into his skin. His eyes, frantic and darting, scanned the words he had written himself, each letter a knife twist to his conscience. The stifling silence of the courtroom was filled with the roar of the storm raging inside him. His own lies, once whispered in the false intimacy of a private chat, were now brought to life on these cold, lifeless documents. They had risen up to corner him, to leave him utterly exposed and defenseless. The glib, sarcastic tone of his emails, the careless promises he had made to Megan about paying her back for the furniture, were now undeniable evidence. The last shreds of his defiance had disintegrated, replaced by a profound sense of defeat that was visible for all to see. Judge Judy's voice, a sudden sharp crack, shattered the silence. Now you see it where you told her you were going to pay her. The question was less of an inquiry and more of a merciless revelation, a public peeling back of his final lie. The judge's gaze was a relentless force, fixed on his, stripping away the last of his self-deception. Tyler, his head bowed slightly, could only manage a whisper. Yes, I remember those conversations. These words were more than a simple admission. They were the conclusion of a long internal battle. In that moment, he understood the profound chasm between the worthlessness of his empty words and the immense weight of a documented promise. From a distance, Megan watched him, her expression outwardly cool and composed. Yet her inner world was a maelstrom of conflicting emotions. Tyler's look of utter helplessness was the unmasking of the man she had once loved. In his defeated eyes, she saw the tragic journey of love and trust, of how they had been twisted and contorted until they became nothing more than a legal debt in a courtroom drama. The emails, with their flippant tone and coarse language, proved not only that he owed her money, but that he had lost all respect for her. But now it was over. The moment of justice she had sought had arrived, and with a hollow emptiness, she also felt a quiet sense of relief. This case wasn't merely about recovering a loan, it was about reclaiming her dignity and finally beginning to heal the wounds left by their broken relationship. Judge Judy, with a slow, deliberate movement, lowered her glasses and fixed her gaze back on Tyler. The courtroom's atmosphere was electric, thick with the tension that precedes a final judgment. The spectators, who had been whispering in hushed tones just moments before, fell completely silent. Every eye was on the bench, every breath held in anticipation. Bird, standing in the background, was as professional and composed as ever, but the faint, almost imperceptible curve of his lips suggested he knew what was coming. The judge picked up her pen and, with a motion that was both final and heavy, she laid it back down on the desk. The small sound it made was as loud as a gunshot in the tense silence. Her voice, when it came, was as solid and unyielding as a block of granite. Good. 2,230. The number echoed through the room, a monetary value that seemed to hang in the air, a final and absolute figure. But this was no ordinary number. It was the cost of Megan's broken heart, of the time she had wasted, and of the trust he had so carelessly discarded. The judge had not simply stated a number. She had hurled a verdict at Tyler's face like a physical blow. Judgment for the plaintiff. It was a definitive, unassailable decision. There would be no more arguments, no more flimsy lies. "We're done." The words rang out, the final bell tolling the end of the case. Tyler's shoulders slumped as if the weight of the entire world had been dropped upon them. He was a man utterly broken, stripped of his pride and his excuses. Megan took a deep, shuddering breath and closed her eyes. The journey was finally over. Everything that had begun with the foolish, hopeful promises of young love, of matching tattoos and shared dreams, now ended with a cold, hard judgment of $2,005. Every single person in that courtroom, from the spectators to the bailiff, had felt the dramatic weight of the moment. Justice, they all knew, was not always measured in numbers, but in the expressions on a person's face. And now, a final message for you. The camera zooms in on the narrator, who looks directly into the lens, their eyes holding a knowing gaze. This story shows us a powerful lesson. Sometimes the most compelling evidence isn't just a document with numbers, but the undeniable weight of our own words and promises. A relationship, whether a partnership or a simple friendship, is built on a foundation of mutual respect and honesty. Tyler lost not just money, but Megan's respect, and in the end, his own. And the result, as we all saw in that courtroom, was a final reckoning delivered for all the world to see. To ensure you don't miss out on more true stories like this, be sure to subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, and share your thoughts on the case in the comments below. See you next time.